I'm wearing the beanie because I haven't shaved for a few days, so and always I'm so self-conscious. Um, this is a difficult topic to talk about, and I want to approach it with a lot of respect and calmness. I don't want to upset people, but anyone who's watching this is um, going to be understanding that it's not an easy topic to talk about, but it's something that we should talk about because it's life. We all live, we all die, and everyone is touched by death. Everyone has to experience it either themselves or in their life they experience it once, multiple times, where they experience the pain and trauma that goes along with it. Um, there's so much that we all have to deal with. You know, there's the the experience of going through the process of someone dying, the experience of after someone's died, and there's also the fear of dying. You know, so that could be in the form of traumatic experiences where you almost die. Um, so there's personal experiences, and then there's secondary or vicarious experiences, interpersonal, where you are experiencing your experience through your connection with someone, and they're all difficult and it's all painful, but it should be something that we could talk about, and that's why I thought I'd talk about it. So there really is a lot to talk about, and I did make you know um, a few notes, but maybe I should just start with a random one. Okay, so let's talk about funerals because that's what happens when someone has died, and the funeral can be a very painful experience. Not everyone can actually go to the funeral. Sometimes it's a I've been to funerals that have been very uplifting as they are able to take someone that has just passed and process the fact that they've just died, and then they can be remembered, and they've been experiences where it's a combination of the people who are putting the funeral on, you know, whatever religious group that is helping the service, and the people that are there to honor the dead that are now they are remembering. So I've had uplifting, memorable experiences with funerals, but I've also had very sad experiences with funerals. And there was a time where I felt like I couldn't go to any more because it was too much. Because the I'd been to too many. I just remembered something. Um, I just had to write something down because I just remembered something. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. And it relates to how the person had passed on, can be how much of a pleasant, uplifting experience to allow someone to be remembered, or it can be a painful reminder of a tragic end to someone's life. So funerals for me got to a point where I didn't want to go to them, and I had a lot of difficulty going to them. And sort of luckily or thankfully, there was long periods where I didn't have people close to me pass on where I had to go to them. But they can be very healing things if they are dealt with, and if they are, if the circumstances are conducive to a peaceful remembering, they can be a really uplifting thing because you can actually rejoice and remember someone's life. But at the same time, if it's not a happy end to someone's life, it can be the most painful thing. And if you experience several of these, you develop an association pain with the whole notion of remembering the dead. Um, y- there's something about processing the death of someone that has been a human thing for so long. It goes back to the earliest archaeological um, excavations are of um, honoring and remembering the dead. And there are so many different ways that it can be done. And these are all ways that people in their own cultures process how they um, deal with the loss, you know. And it doesn't matter what time in history you live, the same things have happened. There's always been happy burials and sad burials. There's been mournings and celebrations. So it's something that has been positive and negative depending on the circumstance. So I'll be talking about some of my experiences, and I'll be very careful and conscientious. Not, I'll be careful and conscientious to honor the dead in speaking of the dead. I don't want to hurt anyone, and I don't want to speak in any detail about any one particular. But because this talk relates to trauma and death and how they're related, I will talk about some of my own experiences, but I want to do so in a way that I can not, I want to honor the people, and I don't want to actually speak about them directly in a way that um, offends anyone. So I live in the country of Australia, and a practice of the Indigenous people here is that when someone passes, you don't speak their name. And so, I'll be following that same thing, is that I wouldn't even think of speaking anyone's name. And I will try and speak in a way that no one can um, think that I'm disrespecting anyone in any way, particular way. It's a very sensitive topic, but in order to talk about this topic, I need to actually talk about my own personal experiences. Um, so when I was 1 year old, that was the first funeral I went to. So I was too young to know what was happening. And all I have from that is a photograph or a few photographs of me with this person who had passed. So I never got to know this person. So I feel like there's this pain that I never got to know this person, and this person was so influential within my world that it caused me to feel their presence. So I even had an experience. I think I was trying to think how old I was. 16 or 17 years old, and I remember lying in bed, and um, I woke up in the middle of the night, and in a dark room, and I'd only ever known this person through photographs, and yet sitting across from me was this person sitting there looking at me on the other bed, just sitting there watching me. So it's like I'd seen a ghost, you know. So I'd just woken up in the middle of the night and I'd seen an image of someone that I had met, but only been 1 year old. And that's a profound experience that I remember having woken up in the middle of the night and in the darkness of a room seeing the image of someone as if they were sitting there calmly and peacefully in my presence. And this is what people explain as when they see a ghost. So for me, it was just, I acknowledged it as seeing what I saw as being someone. I'm not saying I saw a ghost or anything. I'm just saying I saw a vision of someone. And to me, it was profound because it was like I felt like I'd seen this and they were there, you know. And I had maybe 5 or 10 minutes just sitting there. And then I felt calm and I was able to go back to sleep. And that was profound. It was like there's someone that I'd never got to know because they passed when I was 1 year old. And then I woke up from a sleep in the middle of the night and I saw this person sitting across from me. And, you know, it was a dark room. So I'm not saying I saw a ghost or anything, but what I saw was something. It was a representation of someone that I had lost, and it meant a lot to me to be able to sit there and in silence and in peace and to be in this person's presence and they were in my presence. And these are experiences that a lot of people have because they have such strong connections to people, so that when they pass, they still feel their presence, and sometimes they see their presence like what I saw. And this was in a dark room and I'd just woken up. So this was profound for me. You know, I this is someone that I never got to know, and I only knew them through photographs and the occasional people talking about this person. So it was something that I remember. And there was sadness involved with this person's passing. And so I got to know this person through how much this person meant to everyone around them. So even though I didn't even get to know this person and I was 1 year old when they passed, as I was growing up, I was always reminded of this person. it's like a mystery. You know, you hear tales and like virtues, their virtues, and how much they meant to people. And I also saw the pain in the woman that had lost her husband, and she was very sad about having lost her husband, and that's something that I remember. And so I always thought that this person meant a lot. And I did experience her suffering and sadness, but she endured. She kept going, and she kept being active, and that taught me endurance and perseverance and compassion in the fact that she was very sad, but she kept going, and she found ways to live and do things after this passing of this person. So the next time I'll get to the chat in a while. I'm just gonna go through stuff first, and then I'll get to the chat. Um, the next experience was very traumatic, and um, this was someone who met an untimely death, and someone who did something horrible. So the trauma associated with this was the fact that it was a shock. This person was not associated at all, and had done something horrible. And so, even though you could say he deserved what he happened to him, he still died. So there was the trauma of the fact that this person had died, but also the fact that this person was a bad person. And so that was very painful and traumatic, because it was, what do you do? How do you even process this? You know, people say some people deserve death, you know, and this person did something very horrible, and you could argue that he deserved punishment. But what happened was his life ended and that was traumatic, even though it wasn't, even though this happened in questionable circumstances, like there's no necessarily a connection between the crime that this person committed and the fact that he was murdered, can't be drawn, but it was still traumatic because his death was traumatic. So even though this person did something horrible, and many people would argue justified that he died, it was traumatic because it's still a life. And this is a very difficult thing because this is where you have to try and understand justice or fate. So it was painful and difficult, even though this person was a monster. So it created like an unresolved trauma. It's his his life ended, and you could argue that he didn't deserve to live for what he lived for what he did. And how do you resolve that? So in many countries of the world, capital punishment exists. There's several countries that publicly execute to this day. So these are difficult things to talk about, and it's all death. This is all the same thing. It's just all in different forms, and it can be traumatic if you're affected by it. And then, so the next thing, I felt like I had my own death as a child when another trauma occurred, and it wasn't a physical death. It was like the death of the child. So it wasn't death itself, but it felt like the child that was once an innocent child was no longer. Another experience was um, the first time I experienced someone I knew end their own life. And I was young at this. I was um, still at, like a, I don't know exactly what year it was, but I was not a teenager yet. I was just before then. And this was very traumatic for me because I had several interactions. I knew this person, and I knew there were two major factors to what led to him ending his own life. And they were um, he had his own unfortunate shame because of limerence. uh, In a, he was a very gentle person. He did not mean any harm, but he did have an attraction towards someone, and he was very gentle and a gentleman. And at the same time, he was being harassed in his own home by someone that lived nearby, almost on a daily basis. And this drove this young person, he was in his teens, and it drove him to the point to end his own life. And that was just, this is something I experienced when I was not even a teenager. And the traumatic aspect to that for me was is that I had knowledge of what this person went through. I knew the pain that this person had gone through, and I couldn't do anything about it. It was too late when it happened. And those things remain. They are trauma that you can't let go of easily, because this person was driven to a point where he ended his own life, and he had no ill will. He did he in he really didn't cross any boundaries. He was honorable in he had limerence, but he didn't go overboard with it. And at the same time, he was being harassed on a daily, almost daily basis, and it pushed him over the edge. And this person was in his mid-teens. He never even got to be an adult. few years later, a couple of years later, I had run-ins with this person, another person who physically assaulted me on several occasions, and um, he was an outcast, and he was also being harassed by someone, and he turned his anger against me. I wasn't directly a part of this harassment, bullying, right? I just saw the bullying going on, and he this person had been ostracized, and he was an outcast, and he targeted me several times and attacked me several times, and he had difficulties with alcohol and drugs, and again he was in his early mid-teens, and he was in a car accident with a drunk driver traveling on a dirt road on a school night. And because this person had attacked me physically on several occasions, when the day after he died, I made fun of it. I didn't, well, I made fun of it in a way, because I'd been attacked by this person several times. He tried choking me, he punched me, you know. There was several occasions where, and there was one occasion where he went to attack me and someone actually stepped in and had a fight with him because he was going to attack me and someone stepped in. But this was a very troubled person, and he died. And then the day after he died, I was not mourning his death. I was early teenager, and my way of processing it was, I wasn't I didn't even know what I was doing. I this person had attacked me several times, scared the life out of me several times. He literally he tried choking me on a bus. So when he died, I didn't get upset. But what happened was, is in the years going on, I was haunted by the fact that this poor person had died, because I could see him in the car like the crashed, overturned car, and I could see him dying, and it haunted me because I felt remorse because I this person had attacked me and choked me on the bus and had walked up straight up to me and punched me out of nowhere. And on another occasion, he tried to start a fight, and someone stepped in. So I had all this reason to be angry and fearful of this person. And then when he died, I wasn't happy that he died, but I didn't care that he died. But in the years moving on afterwards, I felt more and more pain for this person because I could understand he was an outcast. He was he had troubles with alcohol and drugs. He was hitching a ride on a dirt road on a school night. He was doing all the wrong things, and the person who was driving was drunk driving. He was mixing with the wrong crowd, and he had a traumatic death. And so I then became haunted by having images of him being stuck in a car wreck in agony, dying slowly. And that haunted me for a long time. So initially, I had no empathy, or because of the he attacked me. But over time, I felt a lot of empathy towards this person, and I understood that I had several near-death experiences myself, and um, on graduation day of high school, I almost died. I was working to save money to go away, as everyone does when they graduate from high school. And I was in a horrible work accident where I fell off a loft, mezzanine floor, racking, warehouse type place. And I fell onto the ground because of a bad, unsafe practice. And at the time, they were delivering, it was in a grocery store, and they were delivering the groceries on pallets, which I was dealing with, and we were overstocked. And at the exact same time, excuse me, at the exact same time, we had the meat delivery. So we had the meat carcasses getting ushered along the rail system down to the butchers, while at the same time we had pallets of stock come in, big pallets of food wrapped up, and we were quickly trying to unload everything. And because we were rushing, I fell. And I had a near death experience where I fell and I don't want to make this traumatic, but it it was a near death experience. I survived it. But near death experience is close to death. It's actually much more graphic than that too, because um, which I won't go into, but um, it could have been much worse, that accident, and that was traumatic for me. I actually spent many years having that accident replay in my head over and over. And I felt like I died that day. A year later, I was in a severe car accident, which was another near death experience. And I didn't die. I didn't even get hurt. I had my seatbelt on really tight. It was in a really old car, it was a 1969 Cortina, Ford Cortina, and they're a very solid little car. So when we got hit, it flipped the car up on, and it flipped it like that, and then we spun around and then smashed into it, spun around and slid for like 100 meters, spinning around, and then smashed into like three cars, like smashed into a car that smashed into another car. So it was three cars in the end. And me and the driver got out. He was injured because he didn't have his seatbelt tight. I had my seatbelt tight, and these are seatbelts before they automatically lock. These were the old seatbelts that you had to tighten, and so I had mine tight so that when we got hit, it was like I was in a um, amusement park ride. I was just getting shaken around, and the car. So it was a near death experience, but I was safe. And afterwards, I did feel a shock, because if I hadn't, if I had my seatbelt loose, because they were the old seatbelts, I would have gone straight out the window, or I would have been dead. I would have been shaken around, and so it was death. Then there was another death of someone who was a really bad person, and I empathized Well, I don't know. When this was a really bad person. Just crossing that out. I don't. I try and not dwell on the past, but like it's painful. Then I had the death of an unborn child, so I didn't become a father, and that is something that I had a lot of pain from and a guilt. And I think about it all the time. And I've only recently just processed this trauma that sat there for so long. One of the most painful things for me was like all of my friends who ended their own lives. I had the first one. He was troubled, and he he ended his own life in a really brutal way, in a public way, which is really traumatic. And it shocked everyone. He he didn't do it away from public. He was in in it traumatized people around. It showed how much pain this person was going through. And one of the hardest things for me was that I I can't remember what anniversary it was. It was an anniversary of the day, and I used to have to drive underneath this bridge every day, 5 times a day. And every time I drove past this bridge, I fucking thought of this guy. Um, on this anniversary of his death, there's his parents. standing on the bridge, watching the traffic. And I'd been thinking of this guy every time I drove under the bridge. 5 times a day I had to do that for 2 years while I was doing this job, because it was right there where it happened. And on the anniversary of his death, I see his parents there. I'm sorry if this is traumatizing for people, but um, years later, there was probably the most painful thing for me was I had a friend who I knew was going through trouble, and his marriage had broken up, and there was chance that it was going to get back together. And I was working for a charity, and he was a tradesman. So I asked if he could sign off or look at this property to do, like, to, because we couldn't afford. And I was like, could you do this and help us out? And he's like, yeah, sure. I said, awesome. It wasn't much for him. All he had to do was come and look at the place and say, you need to do this, you need to do that. He didn't have to do the work. He just had to advise, you know. And then he calls me up and he says, I won't be able to do that job. He said, oh, so and so is going to do it for you, you know. I was like, oh, okay. He goes, yeah, I'm going to be busy. I said, okay. Then I s- and then he said he had troubles with his friends. There was a falling out with his friends. And he said how he had his falling out with his wife. And I said, oh, I thought there was a chance you'll get back. And he said, nah, it's not happening. He tried. I said, oh, don't give up hope, man. You know, you know, things could work out. And he goes, nah, they won't. I said, oh, I said, I hope they do. He said, I hope they do too. And then he said, yeah, but so and so is going to come and do the job. And then he hung up. And then I'm like, I knew he was like upset, but I couldn't tell. Just he didn't sound like he was that upset, you know. So I didn't worry. And then I found out that he ended his life that night. Yeah, so death can be like the most painful thing. Uh, I didn't get a call from the police. I didn't get any counselling or anything. Like, why didn't they fucking call me and say, what did he say? How are you going? I didn't get anything. So, um, excuse me. Um, when I was working for a business and I was delivering for them, one of their clients was a real estate agent. And this guy murdered his wife, and they were under investigation. And the mistress had some guilt in putting him up to it. And so they were under investigation. And before he was put in prison, before they had enough evidence, he was still operating his business. And I had to go to their business to deliver their things. I won't say what it was. But it was products to do with their business. And there were 3 occasions I had to deliver to them. And this guy got convicted. He's in prison now for murdering his wife. So I had to go and deliver packages, and he opened the door. Then the next time, the mistress opened the door because she worked there. And she's messed up now. I saw a thing about her. Um, she obviously has guilt in part of the murder. And on the 3rd time, a detective opened the door, and the mistress was in the background. And that was traumatizing in a lot of ways. And then when they finally convicted convicted him and put him in prison for murdering his wife, there were helicopters in the sky all day hovering around the courthouse. And they released balloons. And I was doing deliveries in the city. And that was really traumatizing because it was like, I'd been stuck in this thing where I'd been exposed to. On the fourth time was actually delivering to the police. Like they kept their business running, and they got to the point in the investigation where I wasn't to go anywhere near the business, and I was delivering directly to the police officers. And that was traumatizing because it was I'd seen everyone's pain, and the whole city went through pain over this because it was this um, mother that was murdered brutally by her husband who was having affairs. Horrible story. And this guy was just a decrepit, evil person. And he's now in jail. So I was exposed to that, and so I no. Then there was like a couple other friends who ended their own lives, and that was equally as painful. One of them was a similar thing where it was only days previous I'd spoken to them, and they were telling me how much stress they were going through, and there was no sign of what was going to happen. And I just said, just keep doing what you're doing and like enjoy life and like because he was into music and stuff, and I said it was like, oh, what's I want to buy some speakers, for my stereo because his stereo was busted. And so I sent him a link to these speakers. I said, buy these speakers, they'd be good. And then a couple of days later, but he was telling me how much he was going through. He said he was going through troubles, and I said, don't worry about that stuff. Just focus on yourself and enjoy life. And I thought I said all the right things to him. I thought I thought how like I said all the right things to him. I said he was telling me all the troubles he was going through, and I said just enjoy the music and don't worry about this stuff. You know, if they're giving you hassles, don't don't worry about it. Just do your own thing and just live your life and you know enjoy your life. I remember that's all I said to him. And I look back, I go, what did I say? Did I say the wrong thing? And I think, no, I didn't. I said the right thing. I couldn't have changed what happened. And then I went through my own crisis where I got to the point where I wanted to end my own life. And I'm now recovered and survived that. So, and I just got to blow my nose. So there's so many different experiences there. Like I know it sounds trivial, that experience with like the convicted murderer, but that was really traumatic because this guy was in the news. Like when he first opened the door, I saw the scar. He had scratches on his face, and they were the scratches his wife made when he was murdering her. I'm sorry, this is traumatic, but I had this. I shouldn't have even said that, but that's what I saw, and that's why I'm so traumatized by that. Um, and it was big news. It was all over the news. So when I was having to go to these offices, I was looking around, expecting I've got paparazzi taking photos of me. Uh, and then they finally got justice, and they had the helicopters and the balloons getting released into the sky, and that was just, it was justice. They finally got justice for this. But like, one other thing with the funeral, there was a funeral I went to where I had to. They didn't have the sound guy. They didn't. They had no sound, and um, because I do audio stuff, they said, "Oh, can you do the audio?" And I had 10 minutes to set this up. They had the mixer, they had the stage, and it was a creaky microphone, and like the plinth was making noise, and I had to work out this mixer in 10 minutes, and it was at a funeral, and like I was under pressure, and I worked it all out. I had to plug in phones and queue up like songs from YouTube and bloody CD player, and they had like a computer plugged in to the mixer as well, going to the projector, and I had to work the mixer in 10 minutes. And then I did the whole funeral perfectly without one blip of sound or crackle or um, so I felt like I'd done service in that. I felt honored to be able to have done that. And so sometimes you can be in a position like that where you step in, like you didn't ask for it, you got asked to do something, and you were able to. So that was something. It's been really healing for me to be able to tell everyone this pain I've gone through, and I hope it can be understood. These are experiences. These are my experiences, but like we all have very similar experiences, and it's all very pain. You know, I see all the comments there, and I don't know if I've got the energy to be able to read anything at the moment. And I know that like everyone's been sharing their experiences, so I'd like to honour that and to read them out. I just need a minute to maybe breathe for a minute. Just um, Sixth Sense Amelia says kia ora to everyone. Timothy Gallagher says, yes, sometimes it's just better to make a homemade pumpkin pie in their honor absence. That's a really nice, you do it. It's you honor that. You honor it however you can and whatever you think. And that's a beautiful thing. You're doing what means something to you. That's really special. It's make it. It. How do you like honor something? You know, you do it by finding your own way to do it. And if you can't be there, you can you have your own ceremony type thing. You know. Alex says, "Hey guys, how you going, Alex?" Marina, got the heart. Timothy Gallagher says, doesn't know if helping out, but making pumpkin pies is of use. But thought about you. No, it does. Like everyone has their own way. He continues, as Rock used to be a tourist site, but now it's off limits since 2019. That's it. Missing pieces found. Timothy says, yeah, it felt great that somebody visited in one sleep. Yeah, that was a special moment for me growing up. It was like I'd seen it was like I'd seen a ghost, basically. And I sat there in silence for like about 10 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes. Just he was just sitting there watching me, and then I went back to sleep. So I never got to meet this person. Never got to know them, but it was an experience. Baby Stag says, "Hey fam, late here, but I had the time wrong. That's all right. I I've just been basically going through all my trauma in a constructive way, trying to explain it, how much painful it is. I don't know. Like I was gonna, hopefully, it people can find their own connection to my experiences and reflect on their own, and that helps. Sixth Sense Amelia says, Kia ora, Luke. Hello, Luke and community. My apologies for late arrival. I'm quickly replaying the last few minutes. Catch up. Michaela's here. How you going, Michaela? Gangrene Thumb says you need to forgive yourself. You're a human. That's okay to process trauma in different ways. It doesn't make you a bad person. Thank you for your comment there. It's there's I guess there's that unresolved stuff, and that's what happens with death. Is you have this unresolved stuff, and I have to, you know, especially with my friends that I've lost that ended their lives ended early. There's a lot of pain there, and so yeah, you're right. Kayla says, Luke, forgive yourself. It's okay to not feel terrible that this person died. Thank you, Michaela. Michaela says, yeah, great minds. Timothy says, hard to let go of a memory. It is. That's that's a big part of it, is that you can't let it go, and you don't want to. In some ways, because you're remembering the person, but then sometimes if there's the trauma associated with the way it ended up, you don't want to let go of that either. Or you can't. Well, you want to remember. You're stuck with both. You know. So you want to just remember the good parts, but then you can't just remember the good parts. You get stuck with both. Sixth Sense Amelia says, apologies not necessary. If I feel like I need time out, I'll go for a short break. Okay. Thank you for that. I think that was when I was saying I'm sorry. I was getting a bit heavy with all my experiences. M Hammond's here. How you going, M? M says, howdy, sorry for joining late. That's all right, M. M says, big hugs, Luke. Yeah. Sixth Sense has got the emoji, and the M Hammond's got the heartbreak and the care. And then Sixth Sense says, short, concise explanation, basic details that you experience helps with understanding the context, Luke. Sixth Sense says, yes, take a minute, have a sip of water if you have one handy. I do have water just over here. Thanks everyone for being here, eh? I didn't know what I was going to talk about, and all I ended up talking about was my experiences. And I didn't go through all of them because I just felt guilty, but like some of those are pretty full on, and they cover different aspects. And it's interesting how you different different things, really touch you. Like, like I spoke a lot about people whose lives ended early, and they're the ones that really were the traumatic ones, whether it was through an accident or through their own accident that happened through their own. And yeah, but and also that difficulty of like when you someone who's done you wrong dies, someone who's sometimes like I spoke of someone who did a horrible crime and then they were murdered. And I felt like they deserved it, but then at the same time I felt like they didn't deserve to die. And then there was the kid who was a outcast and he attacked me and then he died, and I was haunted by his death for many years because I could just see him in this car wreck. And I felt this pain that this poor he was only in his early mid teens, and he was just a misguided kid, just had troubles, and he hitched a ride with the wrong person. Who was a drunk driver. It's all the worst stuff. And then there was the murderer who murdered his wife. I saw him with the scratches on his face. It was all in the news and stuff. And it was just work. That was my job. I was exposed to this. But these aren't even connection like that. What about people you love? You know, when you lose people you love, and I haven't really spoken much about that because I was more talking about the traumatic aspect of, well, I loved, there was a lot of people I spoke about I love, especially my friends who whose lives ended early. Um, and there were more on that list too, which I didn't talk about. And that's a very sad thing, how common that is, that people end up in that way. I guess it's not as traumatic you have when people live a long life and when they pass on, it is a celebration. They got to live a long life, so it isn't traumatic. It's still painful, and there is maybe a trauma associated, but it's nothing like when it's abrupt and and catastrophic. And you know, I mean, even recently, like 2 years ago, the mother of the person who was murdered all those years ago that did that horrible crime, his mother died, you know, and I mourned for her because she lost her son all those years ago, many, many, many years ago. Even though he did this horrible thing, unspeakable crime, he was still murdered, and the mother lost her son. And when she died, I the first day I didn't feel any sadness, but the day after, I really it started. I started feeling the sadness for her. It's like the first day it didn't really hit me, and then it dawned on me that she'd missed her son for 40 over 40 years, or about 40 years. And that's a lot, regardless of the fact that he did this horrible crime. So that it can be compounded trauma, you know. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking through these things, this list of, and it's given me opportunity to really think about these people and process it. And Michaela says, "Thank you for sharing." Baby Stag's got the hearts and the doves. Thank you all. We all have these. We all have these traumas. Hey, we all have these traumas. Everyone experiences death in their family or their friends. You know, some people work in. Um, Thank you, Alex. Some people work in fields where they see it every day. Um, We all, it's something we all, it's we all experience this, and we don't we don't talk about it much. And it used to be a thing that maybe got spoken about more often, or it's almost like you can see why I stopped wanting to go to funerals, because I didn't mention there's a whole bunch of people on that list there that I didn't mention that ended their own lives as well. So um, that became a thing. There's more people on that list, not more, probably half the people on the list there, which, so that's how much of a problem this is. And that's why I got to a point where I couldn't go to funerals, and I didn't want to go to funerals just because it was for that. Um, and they are the saddest funerals, because they're people's lives that got ended short, and they are the most traumatic ones for the families and their loved ones. And I guess, how do you process that stuff? Like I got close to that. Like I attempted to end my own life, and I'm grateful to be here now. And I'm ashamed. I have a shame, because imagine if I put my family through that. That's what stopped me initially. It stopped me, and then I got pushed over the edge, and then that's when I tried to, and then I survived it. So, and then I had to live with the shame of the afterwards. So, if anything, I'm glad that I survived. I'm grateful that I'm here now, and that's why it's never going to happen again. I survived it, and I, you know, I still put my family through the trauma of that, even though I survived. And so I have guilt and shame over that. But at least I'm here, and I've got an opportunity to live. So I just want to thank everyone for being here and hearing my traumas. I'm sorry that that's all I did, is I talked about my traumas tonight. I thought I was going to have something more constructive to talk about, but all I ended up was telling everyone what I went through. And maybe that could be healing for people to just hear other things that people went through. Michaela says, as a mother of a child who attempted to take their life, please forgive yourself and know that your mother is happy you're alive. Thank you, Michaela. Thank you. I appreciate that comment. Thank you. And that does give, she is appreciative, and she the fact that I'm like studying courses and I've got hope for the future. It gives her hope. But I'm going to have to end the stream here because I think I'm I've said as much as I can, and I think we all just need peace. And I'm sorry I've put anyone through. I hope it's been constructive. Michaela says thank you. So much love to everyone, and thank you everyone for being here and just hearing the pain that I went through, and understand that I know that you've all gone through your own separate pain, and so they're all by hearing my pain, it maybe it reminds you that you've endured the same, and that this is, I don't know how to say it, but like remembering people is something that we can do, and the trauma that we go through gives us an opportunity to remember people for who they were. And I was focusing on trauma tonight. I was focusing on people's deaths that were traumatic. I wasn't talking about happy endings to people's lives. So that's what trying to say, is that I was focusing on the painful ones, and that we do get to have beautiful. I sort of talked about at the beginning that like there are beautiful send-offs for people who've had full lives, and we can rejoice and we can have those. But I wasn't talking about that tonight. I was talking about the pain. And thank you everyone for being here and being so supportive. And much love to everyone. Thank you.